with one impossible secret? Imagine standing in a room full of billionaires, and out of nowhere, a stranger points to you a forgotten place.
You're the missing piece. The secret is you.
The truth everyone's been hiding. Tonight, you will witness how revenge twists through luxury boardrooms. How a $25 necklace exposed a conspiracy that tore families apart and forced even the most powerful to kneel before justice. What would you do if every pain, every betrayal you ever suffered finally earned its breathtaking reward? Stay with me. This story will drag you into the shadows and pour light where no one dares to look. Every moment is a choice between hope and heartbreak, between running and rising. When the truth erupts, when the final reveal hits, you won't just watch, you'll feel it in your skin, your chest, your soul. By the end, I promise, your pulse will race, your mind will beg for more. So don't blink. The reward waiting is bigger than you ever imagined. Every city has its own hush, and at Lorera in Chicago, that hush arrived the instant Eleanor Whitford stepped inside. Like clockwork, conversations paused, glasses froze mid-gesture, and the delicate tinkle of silverware stilled against the white linen. Eleanor didn't need to speak. Her mere presence could silence a crowd. She ruled boardrooms, shaped headlines, and tonight carried the weight of power ages old, refined in Manhattan, burnished in London, now looming over the Midwest. It wasn't just reputation, it was the air she bent, the way seasoned investors straightened their ties, as if her approval guaranteed their survival. Yet, for all her control, tonight her legacy hovered on a thread, a necklace, cheap and glinting, around the wrong neck, Eleanor's. I zeroed in not on a rival, not an exec, but Sofia Alvarez. A young waitress tracing quiet arcs between tables. Sofia's movements had an ease born of practice, yet her armor wasn't privilege or pedigree. She carried herself like someone accustomed to uncertainty, her poise laced with a survivor's alertness. But it was the necklace, a $25 little thing, awkwardly elegant against Sofia's uniform, that unsettled Eleanor more than any boardroom betrayal ever could. The shape, the shine it, matched the pendant she'd chosen for Helena, her daughter, on the eve of everything falling apart. In that instant, the clamor of status faded. The only sound in Eleanor's mind was the echo of a question left unanswered for decades. To anyone watching, this seemed routine, a powerful woman, distracted, a server with hands to steady. But beneath the surface, the air thickened, Eleanor's breath caught. The world shrunk to just Sofia and the necklace, an artifact that twisted time, pulling Eleanor back to nights of grief, empty hospital corridors, and legal folders marked without resolution. But revenge didn't announce itself with speeches or grand gestures. It crept behind veils, waiting for the moment the truth shone out uninvited. For Eleanor, that pendant was revenge's caller sign. Her shadows might finally be split by daylight. Sofia felt it too, though she hadn't the faintest guess why. All her life, the necklace was her one constant from foster home to foster home, from the lost days in Detroit to uncertain futures in Chicago. It had survived everything. Broken families, cold holidays, years when even hope seemed cheap. She'd never imagined it was anything but generic, yet tonight it channeled something far older and weightier. The hush in the dining room wasn't only about Eleanor. It was about two lives about to crash into each other, all because of a piece of jewelry no one else cared to see. Eleanor stood, motioning Sophia aside with the kind of authority that allows no refusal, without fanfare but with intent. She led the young woman to the manager's office, tight space half-lit by nightlife neon. There, the billionaire produced an old, creased photograph. Helena, radiant, pregnant, wore the identical necklace. "How did you get this?" Eleanor's question carried layers: grief, suspicion, longing. Sophia, startled, explained. It was hers since infancy. The sole inheritance her birth had allowed before orphan files and bureaucratic neglect did their work. The encounter was tense, awkward, real. Eleanor gripped her own wrist, steadying nerves not easily rattled. She listened as Sophia outlined a life spent searching for clues, hoping for connection enduring the system's indifference, learning not to expect rescue. In these details, Eleanor saw the pattern of her own pain. Great loss, denied revenge, and truth buried under polite society's rules. She wondered if the shadows of her past now looked different than the ones Sophia learned to survive. Back in the main dining room, curiosity sparked. Guests whispered. Some wondered if Eleanor's distraction meant trouble for the Whitford fortune. Others noticed the manager, Daniel Brooks. Inside the office, his face pale, hands restless, secrets flickering in his eyes. The night's tide was changing, and only the necklace seemed to know why. Eleanor resolved, with the precision of a strategist, to take action. She ordered a private DNA test discreet, but absolute. Sophia agreed, not for money, but for certainty. Sometimes all revenge wants is truth, plain and undeniable. The tests were practical, swift. Eleanor offered advice. Face what you fear directly. Don't let the world tell your story. She listed books Maya Angelou's memoirs, stories of persistence and power. Sophia talked about volunteering at children's shelters, trying to build purpose out of pain, out of questions no adult had ever answered. Together, their plans became not just survival, but transformation. Both would seek out ways to turn loss into meaning. To prove life wasn't only about what you inherit, but what you make with it. Details. Flickered tips for healing, for resilience, for channeling anger into growth. Eleanor shared rituals. She wrote unsent letters to Helena. She consulted with therapists on trauma and legacy. Sophia asked about wellness routines, apps for tracking moods, podcasts about overcoming adversity. These moments made revenge not just an abstract wish, but a strategy for becoming wiser, stronger, able to craft a future out of shattered beginnings. As the evening wound on, Eleanor returned to her table, pale but composed. Sophia, carrying invisible weight, resumed her rounds, every step watched now by eyes that sensed history turning. The DNA courier arrived, a sample discreetly taken, a promise that neither woman would sleep before justice found shape. Daniel lingered, dreading the day someone asked what he knew about St. Mary's Medical Center in Detroit. In the quiet aftermath, Eleanor planned how to reveal this truth, not as a scandal, but as restorationer grandchild, a new legacy, a way to rewrite what power means. This wasn't just a story of loss. It was the moment when two different kinds of revenge, one open, finally met. Secrets transformed into strategy. Pain became hope. And all the glitter of high society paled next to a single link of silver. Sometimes everything changes in 5 minutes, and the small details, sometimes all you need is a necklace to force the past into daylight. If you found resonance here, if you've ever kept a secret close, or wished you could crack open the hushed luxury of a room with one honest movelet, that feeling be your catalyst. Quietly tap like. Let your action ripple. Sometimes even the smallest gesture turns the tide. Because by the end, the truth always overcomes the shadows. The old office behind Lorera's bustling kitchen was hardly glamorous, scuffed linoleum, tangled cables, the sharp scent of disinfectant. Yet tonight, it became the stage for a reckoning neither Eleanor nor Sophia saw coming. Eleanor's hands didn't shake as she laid a faded photograph on Daniel Brooks' desk. Beneath the harsh LED glare, the image glowed. Helena Whitford, young and maternal, her eyes bright with hope. The same $25 necklace glinting on her chest. Sophia stared at the photo and at Eleanor, unsure which reality hurt more, the past she never knew, or the possibility it was hers. Sometimes, truth feels like an ambush, and revenge is just a longing for lost time returned. Eleanor's voice was steady, but her words betrayed hidden urgency. That necklace, it was Helena's. Tell me how you got it. Sophia's answer was blunt, shaped by years of broken promises. She'd had it since being found as a newborn in a Detroit hospital restroom. Just another orphan shuffled into the foster system. The dates, the city, they overlapped with the tragedy that stole Helena. Eleanor's logic ran like a chess game. Her mind mapped out timelines, probed for coincidence, sensing that this was more than fate. Daniel Brooks lingered by the door, tension coiling in his jaw. Deep down, he recognized the convergence of old wounds and new justice, another link in the shadowy chain tying lives together through vengeance and truth. It's a strange feeling, standing between what you've lost and what you might regain. Sophia, awkward but resolute, described her earliest memories. Nights spent awake in strange houses, clinging to the necklace for comfort, reading borrowed library books by flashlight. Eleanor listened, her heart squeezing as she thought of Helena smiling through heartbreak. hoping her own child might find anything lasting. Daniel, masking nerves, shuffled papers on his desk, remembering secrets buried at St. Mary's Medical Center. Eleanor decided they couldn't rely on coincidence alone. "We need to know for certain," she said. "Would you do a DNA test?" Sophia nodded, her courage quietly matching Eleanor's authority. Sometimes revenge isn't about taking, it's about finally knowing. Sometimes the shadows have answers. Examples shape real choices. Eleanor recommended practical steps for facing doubt: journaling every night, reviewing old photographs with fresh eyes, even seeking out meditation podcasts for clarity. Sophia noted that helping others in foster care could make sense of her own pain-sharing resources, building friendships with others who'd lived in the shadows too. Daniel, pale but trying not to show it, suggested hospitals that support adoptions. Some places do better. Find the ones that care. Advice unsought. But sometimes truth and revenge find teamwork, sparking change in unlikely corners. The room grew quieter as Eleanor dialed a discreet DNA service, efficient and called a few swabs, signatures, and reminders that destiny loves paperwork. Sophia asked practical questions, showing her readiness. "If I'm your granddaughter, what would you want, legacy or forgiveness?" Eleanor paused, measuring her answer not in dollars, but in years missed. "Both. You deserve to choose." Daniel watched, haunted by old debts and silent obligations, wondering if revenge would catch up before anyone learned his real story. Even in this cramped office, the tension had weight: truth and shadows face to face. If you ever felt torn by old photographs or wondered how one relic could rewrite your family's history, this chapter is for you. Your own comments can spark new truths and help untangle revenge from regret. Share below what resonated or what you'd do in Sophia's shoes. Your voice connects shadows to sunlight. Because here, truth doesn't hide forever. Sometimes the difference between revenge and healing fits in the palm of your hand. Nestled in a $25 necklace and the courage to ask questions. Sophia Alvarez's story didn't begin with "hop it," began with a bathroom floor, cold tile under a stranger's hurried hands, a newborn wrapped in hospital linens nobody claimed. The details were vague, kept in manila folders stamped with bureaucratic indifference. But the result was clear. She became property of the system, passed from one temporary home to another like a borrowed book nobody finished reading. Her earliest memory was "Aunt Love," or laughter. It was the scent of institutional laundry detergent and the feeling that belonging was a privilege reserved for other children. Yet through every move, every broken promise, the necklace stayed. It became her anchor, her proof that once someone cared enough to leave her something. In those quiet moments, revenge felt impossible, but truth was the only thing worth chasing through the shadows. Foster care teaches you survival in ways textbooks never capture. Sophia learned to pack her life in 30 minutes. to smile through awkward family dinners where she was the guest who'd never leave, to answer questions about real parents with practiced neutrality. One home had too many kids and not enough food. Another had a mother who meant well but couldn't handle the weight of someone else's trauma. Sophia kept a journal pages filled with questions nobody answered, dreams she was too scared to say aloud. She wrote about wanting to be a nurse, to help kids like her, to prove that shadows don't define your ending. Practical advice came from librarians and guidance counselors, not family. Read Maya Angelou, study hard, find mentors who see you. Every page was a small act of revenge against a world that tried to make her invisible. The necklace, cheap and simple, became her talisman. She'd trace its edges before sleep. Imagining the hands that clasped it, first hands she'd never know, a face she'd never see. Other kids lost things constantly in the chaos of moving, but Sophia guarded that pendant like it held her real name, her truth, her ticket out of the shadows. Teachers noticed her focus, the way she turned pain into discipline, grief into straight A's. One caseworker suggested college funds for foster youth. Another mentioned support groups where kids shared stories of survival and small victories. Sophia absorbed it all, building her future one careful choice at a time. She didn't call it revenge, but refusing to disappear, refusing to accept just another foster kid as her only identity. That was power. By the time Sophia turned 18, she'd lived in 7 homes across Detroit and Chicago. The system aged her out with a handshake and a voucher for transitional housing. No family reunion, no tearful goodbye, just paperwork and the reminder that she was on her own. She found work at L'Aurora not because she loved fine dining, but because it paid rent and let her save for nursing school. Every shift, she watched wealthy families celebrate milestones she'd never had, watched mothers hug daughters, watched grandparents beam with pride. It stung, but Sophia learned to smile through it. Revenge isn't always loud. Sometimes it's just showing up, doing the work, proving you belong in spaces that tried to lock you out. Flash forward to tonight. Eleanor Whitford, billionaire matriarch, staring at Sophia's necklace like it held the answer to a decades-old question. The idea seemed absurd. Granddaughter. Sophia had spent her life invisible, and now she was supposed to believe she mattered to an empire. The weight of it pressed on her chest. She thought of every caseworker who'd shrugged, every foster sibling who got adopted while she stayed behind. Every night, she asked the universe why her story felt unfinished. Now, standing in that cramped office, truth was within reach, but so was the fear that this, too, might be a mistake. Another shadow pretending to be light. Eleanor's voice cut through Sophia's spiral. We'll know for certain. DNA doesn't lie. The words were clinical, but Eleanor's eyes betrayed something deeper: hope. Dread, the kind of truth that redefines everything. Sophia nodded, her own voice steady, despite the storm inside. If I'm really her, your granddaughter, what happens then? Eleanor paused, weighing legacy against lost time. Then we rebuild. Together. It was a promise wrapped in uncertainty, but for Sophia, it was more than she'd ever been offered. Revenge, she realized, wasn't about punishing the past. It was about reclaiming what the shadows stole. Outside the office door, Daniel Brooks listened, his face drained of color. The conversation triggered a memory he'd spent years burying. A hospital corridor at St. Mary's, fluorescent lights buzzing, a newborn in his arms, and the envelope of cash that bought his silence. He'd told himself it was a one-time thing, that the baby would find a good home, that he'd been young and desperate. But now, decades later, the truth was clawing its way out of the shadows. Eleanor Whitford wasn't just any billionaire, she was the mother of the woman whose baby he helped disappear. Daniel's hands trembled as he backed away from the door, mind racing through exit strategies and lies that might still hold. Revenge, he realized too late, doesn't forget it, just waits. Sophia's past wasn't just her own anymore. It was a puzzle piece in Eleanor's grief, a weapon in someone's long-buried conspiracy, a story that could rewrite legacies and destroy reputations. As the DNA swabs were sealed and labeled, Sophia felt the shift her life splitting into before and after, invisible and seen, shadow and truth. She thought of all the foster kids still waiting, still hoping, still clinging to something small and precious. If her story could give them hope, if sharing it could pull even one child out of the system's shadows, then maybe this chaos had purpose. Maybe truth and revenge could finally walk the same path. Stories like Sophia's don't often get told, they get filed away. Forgotten, buried under the weight of systems that fail and people who look away. But when you share what matters, when you pass along a truth that someone else needs to hear, you turn shadows into stepping stones. If this chapter reminded you of a story that needs telling or a truth worth spreading, don't keep it to yourself, share it forward. Sometimes, the act of sharing is the revenge we take against silence. Because in the end, the truth always overcomes the shadows. The DNA courier arrived at Lorera with the kind of discretion money buys no uniform. No fanfare, just a sleek black case, and the quiet efficiency of someone who'd done this 1,000 times. Eleanor and Sophia sat across from each other in the cramped office, the space suddenly feeling smaller as reality crystallized into cotton swabs and consent forms. This wasn't theory anymore, wasn't grief wrapped in nostalgia or hope dressed as coincidence. This was science, cold and final, ready to confirm what their hearts already whispered. Eleanor's hands were steady as she signed, but Sophia noticed the way the billionaire's jaw tightened a tell that even empires couldn't hide. Truth has a way of stripping power down to its bones, and tonight, revenge would either find its target or dissolve into shadows. Sophia's hand trembled slightly as the swab brushed her inner cheek. She'd imagined this moment in 100 different ways, finding family, learning her real name, discovering she mattered to someone beyond paperwork and pity. But now, face to face with it, fear crept in. What if the test said no? What if this was just another dead end, another shadow masquerading as light? Eleanor seemed to sense the doubt. Whatever the result, she said quietly, "You're not alone in this. Truth deserves company, not silence." It was the kind of mental wisdom that cuts through panic practical grounding, the voice of someone who'd survived her own wars. Sophia nodded, grateful for the anchor, and handed the sample back. Sometimes, revenge isn't about anger, it's about refusing to let the past stay buried. Outside the office, Daniel Brooks paced the narrow hallway, his mind a riot of old mistakes and present danger. The conversation he'd overheard Delena Sophia, the necklace. The dates it all pointed to a truth he'd spent 26 years running from. His memory dragged him back, unwilling and merciless. St. Mary's Medical Center in Detroit, the night shift chaos, fluorescent lights humming over tired nurses and worried families. Daniel had been younger than, ambitious, drowning in gambling debts that turned into threats. That's when the offer came: cash, enough to clear his slate, in exchange for making a problem disappear. He hadn't asked questions. He'd taken the baby, left it in a bathroom, walked away. At the time, he told himself the child would be found, adopted, loved, but the shadows of that choice never left him. Flashbacks hit in fragments, the weight of the newborn in his arms, the envelope of bills slipped into his locker. The stranger's voice on the phone instructing him to handle it quietly. Daniel had convinced himself it was survival, that everyone makes compromises when the world backs them into corners. But now, standing outside Eleanor Whitford's makeshift war room, he understood this wasn't compromise. It was betrayal. And revenge, patient and inevitable, had finally circled back. He thought about running, buying a plane ticket, disappearing into the kind of anonymity he'd given that baby. But where could he go that Eleanor's resources couldn't follow? The truth was closing in, and all his shadows were about to meet daylight. Inside, Eleanor and Sophia waited in tense silence, the kind that makes minutes feel like hours. Eleanor broke it with practical advice, the mentor in her rising to fill the void. While we wait, let's talk about what comes next, no matter the result. If your family will need legal counsel, financial advisors, a plan. If you're not, I'll still help you find your real story. Either way, you deserve answers. Sophia appreciated the clarity, the refusal to let emotion drown logic. She asked about resources for foster youth, about foundations that help kids navigate aging out of the system. Eleanor's eyes lit up. This was a woman who turned pain into action, who understood that the best revenge against broken systems was fixing them. They discussed scholarships, mentorship programs, even policy changes that could prevent tragedies like Sophia's from repeating. In that moment, truth wasn't just personal, it was purpose. The phone rang, sharp and sudden, shattering the fragile calm. Eleanor answered, her voice crisp. Whitford, the lab technician on the other end, spoke in measured tones, clinical and cautious. Preliminary results show extremely high genetic compatibility. We'll need 48 hours for full confirmation, but initial markers suggest a direct familial relationship, likely grandparent to grandchild. The words hung in the air, too big for the small room. Sophia's breath caught, her world tilting on its axis. Eleanor closed her eyes, decades of grief and rage and hope colliding in a single exhale. When she opened them, they were wet but fierce. "Thank you. Send the full report as soon as it's ready." She hung up, turned to Sophia, and for the first time let herself smile. "We're not done yet, but we're close. Very close." Sophia didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so she did both. 26 years of wondering, of feeling like a ghost in her own life, and now this. Eleanor reached across the desk, took Sophia's hand, and held it firm. "You are not invisible. Not anymore." It was a vow, a promise, a declaration of war against every force that had tried to erase Sophia from her own family. Truth and revenge, long estranged, were finally finding common ground. Outside the door, Daniel Brooks heard enough to know his time was running out. He slipped away quietly, already planning his next move, hoping the shadows might hide him just a little longer. Eleanor and Sophia sat together, processing the weight of almost certainty. The necklace, now understood as more than jewelry, seemed to glow between them, a relic of love that survived conspiracy, neglect, and time. Eleanor spoke about Helena, about the daughter who never got to hold her baby, about the questions that haunted every birthday, every holiday. Sophia listened, her own story finally intersecting with something larger. They talked strategy, how to investigate what happened, who to trust, what justice might look like. Practical steps, grounded in wisdom earned through loss. Eleanor recommended books on resilience. Brené Brown, Angela Duckworth's, who understood that strength isn't about never falling, it's about getting back up. Sophia mentioned podcasts she'd found helpful, communities online where Foster alumni shared survival tips and hope. Together, they began building not just a relationship, but a roadmap. If you've ever waited for a truth that could redefine everything, if you've ever held your breath while the past tried to become present, then you know the weight of this moment. Stories like these remind us that family isn't just blood, it's choice, commitment, the refusal to let shadows win. If this chapter moved you, if it made you think about the truths you still chasing or the revenge you've earned the right to claim, then stay connected. Subscribe to see how this unfolds. Because the best stories aren't just watched, they're witnessed, shared, lived alongside those who refuse to stay silent. Because no matter how long it takes, no matter how deep the shadows run, the truth always overcomes the shadows. 48 hours after that tense night, Eleanor Whitford stood by her penthouse window, Chicago's skyline burning gold, as the DNA report dropped into her inbox. It was official. Sofia Alvarez was her granddaughter. The confirmation hit like a thunderclap, sharp, irrevocable. A truth that smashed every shadow cast over the past 2 decades. Eleanor's chest tightened, grief and relief playing tug-of-war. She called Sophia immediately. The girl's voice, raw with emotion, trembled. For once, hope sounded bigger than doubt. Tonight, revenge finally had a name and truth, had a face the media would never forget. It started with a headline on a gossip blog, "Waitress Heiress. Chicago billionaire claims missing grandchild." Within hours, the story torched across social feeds. News sites, morning talk shows, every channel hungry for scandal and closure. Paparazzi parked outside Lorera, flashes popping as Sophia slipped out the back door, accompanied by Eleanor's security detail. Sophia's world spun. Old foster siblings texted, strangers offered congratulations. Trolls demanded proof. Eleanor orchestrated a press statement, as only she could, poised, commanding, never apologetic. "My family's truth is my responsibility. I will not let years of shadows or vengeance define us." Her words aired on national TV, sparking commentary and debate. Sophia, still reeling, processed the revelation with her trademark resilience. Skeptical but willing to trust the woman she only just met. Eleanor moved Sophia into her penthouse. The transition was surreal. Sophia stood in rooms where every object glistened: art, crystal decanters, silent staff. She felt haunted by luxury, equal parts grateful and out of place. Every window offered a view of a city she'd survived at ground level. Eleanor sensed the tension and addressed it directly. Status is a stage, not a prison. Your family. That's enough. The message landed, but Sophia couldn't shake the feeling she was abandoning her past. She missed her waitressing friends, felt like an imposter at glamorous dinners, and didn't know how to navigate the coded language of wealth. Eleanor, in a rare moment of vulnerability, confessed the same loneliness. Rich or poor, grief is fluent in every language. Media pressure intensified. Journalists camped by the building, and old wounds reopened tabloid mistakes, invasive interviews, family gossip. Sophia refused interviews at first, then chose one reporter she trusted. Sharing her side, foster care survival, the necklace, the lessons she'd learned seeking the truth. She called for reforms and spoke about revenge, how healing meant fighting not only for personal closure, but also for others lost in the shadows. The interview trended for days, and Sophia received letters from strangers, foster parents, survivors, lawyers offering support. Eleanor shielded Sophia as much as she could, but both recognized some storms were necessary to wash secrets clean. Meanwhile, Daniel Brooks, restless, terrified, watched the coverage, his face pale beneath flickering lights. He knew exposure was inevitable. Chicago wasn't a place to disappear when Eleanor Whitford was involved. He packed a suitcase, reviewed his bank balance, and planned a midnight exit. But Eleanor had predicted this move. Her team tracked flight records, flagged suspicious bank transfers, and intercepted Daniel at the airport just as the press broke his name. Revenge isn't just personal, it's methodical. Eleanor's strategist instincts kicked in, handling the situation with unforgiving focus, while Sophia struggled to adapt to the velocity of overnight fame. Eleanor coached her through it. Use the spotlight to shine on what matters, she advised. Practical tips flowed media training, how to handle unfair questions, which charities to endorse, when to speak and when to stay silent. Sophia listened, paying forward what she learned to foster youth who reached out, offering them small scholarships, mentoring online, and sharing playlists of resilience-themed music. Eleanor made calls to attorneys, laying the groundwork for investigations and legal vengeance against every person who profited from Helena's tragedy. Press leaks hinted at lawsuits and reopened files. The world watched the Whitford women claim their story. At home, Sophia found solace in small things: a handwritten recipe from Eleanor, a book club invitation, a quiet movie night. They discovered they could laugh together, argue about favorite authors, cry over memories of Helena. Eleanor described her travels, her mistakes, her secret rituals of healing. Sophia added advice from her past: how to stretch a budget, how to read people, how to find community wherever you go. The necklace stayed with Sophia, now understood as a battle scar and a symbol. Eleanor placed it in a custom case, promising it would be displayed one day in the foundation they were already dreaming up: a place for truth, revenge, and new beginnings. If you've ever felt like your story was too complicated for headlines, or wondered how anyone survives being thrust into the public eye, take heart. Comment below with your own experiences, your questions for Sophia and Eleanor, or the ways you've managed to turn pain into power. Your voice matters. Stories reshape shadows, because no matter the noise, the truth always overcomes the shadows. Eleanor Whitford was never one to let truth go unexplored. Now, with Sophia's identity confirmed and the media frenzy ablaze, she shifted gears from family matriarch to relentless investigator. She hired the city's best private detectives and a law firm known for exposing corporate crime. The mission: chart every shadow from the day Helena died at St. Mary's Medical Center. Files were demanded, surveillance tapes reviewed, phone records dissected. It was the kind of methodical revenge only the powerful could afford, one rooted in justice, not spite. Sophia watched awestruck as Eleanor's empire began wielding its weight for something besides profit. In those moments, truth was a living force, working to drag secrets out of darkness. It started with the hospital's shift logs. Eleanor's team cross-referenced every nurse, doctor, orderly, janitor, anyone who worked the night Helena gave birth. Daniel Brooks, now exposed and running scared, appeared again and again in the records. The trail didn't stop at staffing. A $48,000 deposit had landed in Daniel's account days after the tragedy, flagged by forensic accountants. Eleanor's attorneys dug through adoption paperwork, searching for anything out of place. What they found were forms for a private adoption that never actually happened. Dates didn't align, signatures looked suspicious, and the story began collapsing. Sophia, following along asked pointed questions about hospital protocols, security failures, and what reforms could help vulnerable families in the future. She started attending investigation briefings, taking notes, her desire for truth and revenge evolving into hands-on activism. Daniel Brooks tried to outsmart the process. He booked travel with a fake name, used burner phones, erased digital footprints. But the Whitford team was always one step ahead. At O'Hare Airport, security quietly intercepted him, escorting Daniel out a back entrance. Meanwhile, Eleanor had investigators combing through his PASA debts. The disreputable associates, the envelopes of cash. But when evidence surfaced linking Daniel to Claudia Moreau, Eleanor's former business partner, the plot thickened. Claudia had died mysteriously 12 years prior, but her fingerprints lingered. Records of offshore accounts, coded emails about solving a problem, connections to disgraced lawyers and accountants. Revenge wasn't just personal, it was systemic. Sophia processed it all like a student, hungry for answers. She'd always wondered why hospitals failed children like her, why adults with power could twist systems so easily. Eleanor taught her to read documents critically, to ask for transparency, to refuse easy explanations. They talked about civic action writing representatives, supporting watchdog groups, demanding new laws for adoption oversight and hospital security. Practical wisdom filtered through their conversations. Monitor financial trails, know your legal rights, trust intuition when red flags appear. Sophia kept lists of organizations to support, books to read, podcasts for support. The drive for justice felt like assembling a puzzle, each clue, another step toward daylight. The search intensified. Eleanor's lawyers obtained warrants for hidden safety deposit boxes and subpoenaed email records. Forensic techs reconstructed erased conversations, piecing together Claudia Moreau's final months. Offshore funds were traced back to shell companies linked to Whitford Beauty Group's historical ledgers, exposing fraud and embezzlement. Sophia saw how merciless and methodical Eleanor could be, a mentor who fought for truth but understood that revenge works best when paired with patience. But Eleanor coached Sophia on defense, how to handle smear campaigns, cope with internet hate, and speak out without fear. Never let their shadows mute your truth, she insisted. As the evidence grew, Eleanor called for a private family meeting. She laid out the conspiracy map, names circled in red, years of deception, every player in Helena's disappearance. Sophia listened, determined to someday teach these lessons forward to empower other survivors. To advocate for transparency, Eleanor outlined next steps. A criminal complaint, civil suits against hospital executives, whistleblower support for honest staff. They rehearsed public statements, prepared for rebuttals, and strategized about foundation work to lobby for stronger protections. Sophia, inspired, gathered her peers from foster care networks, launching a WhatsApp group for information exchange and emotional support. The night the indictments were announced, Eleanor and Sophia stood at the window overlooking the city. The view, vast and bright, felt different now. "We're breaking decades of silence," Eleanor said, voice resolute. Sophia agreed, her hope rooted deeper with every new revelation. If you've ever had to investigate your own story, ask uncomfortable questions, or confront layers of deception, share your thoughts below. The journey from revenge to truth is longer than anyone admits, but every step counts. Because sometimes the smartest revenge is exposing what hides in the shadows. And as always, the truth always overcomes the shadows. It was in just Daniel Brooks' nervous glance that signaled things were about to break wide open. It was the way Eleanor Whitford arranged her next moves like a grandmaster. After Daniel's apprehension, Eleanor arranged a quiet yet uncompromising confrontation in a luxury hotel suite, flanked by legal counsel and private investigators. Daniel's facade collapsed under pressure. He confessed what Eleanor had long suspected. Claudia Moreau wasn't just a name in past headlines. She was the orchestrator behind Helena's tragedy and Sophia's stolen childhood. Claudia, once Eleanor's most trusted business ally, had designed the scheme for both personal vengeance and to shatter Eleanor's authority in the Whitford beauty group. Truth, at last, stepped forward from the shadows, no longer content with whispers. In the tense hotel room, Daniel explained how Claudia manipulated desperate people to execute her plot. She'd tracked Eleanor's movements, used her own network to falsify adoption documents, laundered money through shell firms, and bribed hospital staff. Claire's motives were complex: professional jealousy, old wounds, and a hunger to control both wealth and revenge. Eleanor listened, her poise unbroken, as Daniel recounted clandestine meetings, coded messages, and the envelope he'd kept as insurance, a physical link to Claudia's betrayal that he'd hidden in a bank vault. The account details, emails, and money trails began to fill in blanks Eleanor had hunted for decades. For Sophia, hearing her life summarized as the outcome of calculated vengeance was dizzying. But in that moment, truth and revenge merged. They weren't just answers. They were a path forward. Daniel surrendered the vault key, his attempt at redemption, inside the deposit box. Investigators found the evidence necessary to tie Claudia Moreau's legacy of crime to every major player in Helena's disappearance. Letters tracked payments to corrupt accountants and lawyers. Photos revealed secret meetings with officials at St. Mary's Medical. Eleanor let Sophia read the files, making sure she understood that justice was more than punishment. It was fighting for accountability, for reform, for every child trapped by systems built for exploitation. Sophia, now armed with proof and a second chance at family, spent hours collecting advice on recovery, how to process trauma, how to stand strong when old wounds resurface, what civic organizations and mental health resources could help others reclaim their voices. Eleanor and Sophia talked strategy, the value of advocating for systemic change, building coalitions and supporting whistleblowers who risked everything for truth. As news of Daniel's confession spread, media interest exploded again. Eleanor's team handled press inquiries with precision, while Sophia began drafting her own statement about how vengeance sometimes disguises itself as rightful correction. But the goal must always be justice, not destruction. Letters poured in from other survivors of family crime and betrayal. Lawyers offered pro bono support to whistleblowers linked to Claudia's empire. Eleanor saw possibilities for reform, not just within her own conglomerate, but citywide for legislation to keep hospitals transparent and adoptions closely monitored. Sophia found purpose in mentorship and community action, creating guides for navigating trauma and sharing suggestions across foster networks. The revelations transformed Eleanor and Sophia's bond. There were nights spent poring over documents, strategizing legal moves, debating which charities deserved funding. Eleanor taught Sophia to protect her privacy, stay alert for retaliation, and use both diplomacy and defiance where needed. Sophia, inspired, planned webinars for youth navigating inheritance claims, trafficking recovery, and legal battles. Every action was grounded in truth. Revenge, once personal, was now collective. "We're not just fighting for us," Eleanor reminded her. "We're fighting for everyone the shadows threaten." If recognizing the villain in your past has ever unlocked courage, or if you've witnessed the power of exposing those who betray trust, comment with your own experiences. The path from revenge to reform begins with shining light on what others want hidden, because when truth gets its evidence. Eleanor Whitford had endured scandals, acquisitions, and media trials, but what came next required more than reputation. It demanded relentless action and cold strategy. Armed with Daniel's vault key, her investigators opened a deposit box in a discreet downtown bank, revealing a stack of documents more damning than anyone had predicted. Inside was a signed letter from Claudia Morrow, spelling out the scheme in plain words. Payment ledgers, trust account transfers, instructions to loyal accountants and lawyers, and hush money for hospital staff. Photos and coded emails filled in every missing corner, the conspiracy that snuffed out Helena S. Hope and rerouted Sophia S. life. Truth, no longer an abstraction, became the cornerstone for a legal war that would shake Chicago's elite. Eleanor convened her most trusted legal team, sharing the evidence with state prosecutors and a few unshakable journalists. Sophia, who'd once felt invisible, found herself at the epicenter of a criminal case. Her trauma documented and leveraged for reform. The attorneys mapped out a battle plan, indict the corrupt accountant and lawyer, file civil suits against the hospital for negligence, and press charges against every accomplice named in Claudia's files. The evidence was airtight, and political pressure mounted as reporters exposed the scandal's scope. Sophia learned to navigate the melee using advice from survivors, webinars, and trauma counselors. She built alliances with advocacy groups, attended city hearings, and crafted educational videos on legal process for other foster youth. For her, revenge had morphed no longer just about punishment, but about systemic healing. The first hearings brought fear and exhilaration. Daniel Brooks testified in exchange for immunity, recounting the network of bribery, hush money, and falsified adoption paperwork orchestrated by Claudia. The hospital's executives squirmed under cross-examination. Documents revealed their failure to safeguard the vulnerable. Eleanor attended every session, coaching Sophia through the press gauntlet and handling attacks from rival attorneys. The process tried their patience and faith, but together they weathered every blow. "Don't flinch," Eleanor instructed over morning coffee. "But truth that's hard. One sticks longer." Sophia used practical tools, journaling every testimony, joining support calls, and documenting everything for transparency. In online groups, she shared resources, legal clinics, crisis hotlines, how to find pro bono counsel. The revenge was slow, but every step built new strength. Media coverage exploded as the trial heated up. Networks ran exposes. Survivors reached out. Politicians scrambled to distance themselves from implicated hospital board members. Eleanor and Sophia gave interviews, always returning to their mantra: "Personal justice is just the beginning true. Revenge reforms the system." Sophia called for hospital accountability and better oversight on foster care, testifying to Congress and local councils. Her words sparked new legislation and grants for trauma-informed healthcare. Eleanor backed her with millions from the Whitford Beauty Group, earmarking funds for legal aid and whistleblower protection. Victory came, piecemeal, guilty verdicts, resignations, a multi-million-dollar settlement from the hospital. Eleanor and Sophia knew it wasn't enough to restore what was stolen, but it shifted the balanced truth, at last, beating back the shadows. They celebrated by planning a gala for advocacy groups, inviting survivors and allies to share their stories. It's practical wisdom, lived Anna toolkit for fighting injustice and building new futures. If you've ever fought for your story in court, stood alone against powerful systems, or used your suffering to help others, share your insights, because every word sends ripples outward, helping someone else turn vengeance into purpose. In the end, justice comes one step at a time. The courtroom was a cathedral of consequence marble floors, polished oak benches, and rows of strangers waiting for the next twist. Eleanor Whitford entered with Sophia at her side, not as heiress and billionaire, but as witnesses to a history too heavy for press releases. Daniel Brooks, grey and hollowed by guilt, took the stand first. His testimony unfolded like a grim script. Secret meetings with Claudia Moreau, cash handoffs in parking lots, cryptic calls with nervous hospital staff. Every detail was a NIF-revealing betrayal, cowardice, the cost of vengeance paid in decades of stolen joy. Eleanor listened with eyes fixed straight ahead, her presence a shield for Sophia. The truth wasn't just evidence, it was testimony against the shadows that had shaped them. Lawyers for the hospital tried to muddy facts, but Eleanor's legal team was relentless. Emails, phone logs, and deposit slips stacked up. Adoption papers forged, signatures missing, records doctored. The accountant and lawyer named in Claudia's files squirmed under cross-examination. Their responses a tangled web of denials and half-confessions. The court saw through it. Sophia watched, sometimes shaking, sometimes scribbling notes, her old survival instinct now tuned to every word. She testified herself, sharing stories of foster home rotations, the necklace's journey, her fight to reclaim identity. The judge, moved by her resolve, commented that truth spoken aloud had real, transformative power. Revenge felt sharper with every verdict. But Sophia sensed the bigger purpose. Her pain was changing laws, shaping new futures. The hospital pressed on all sides, agreed to a massive settlement, millions for negligence, new protocols for maternity ward security, public apologies for ignoring red flags. Executives resigned, replaced by staff committed to reform. Media coverage was both ruthless and redemptive. Headlines chronicled the trial as a turning point in Chicago's history. Eleanor fielded interview requests, but always redirected attention to Sophia's advocacy work and to survivors who needed their own light. Together, they planned educational partnerships, trauma workshops, legal clinics for foster youth and at-risk families. Sophia recorded podcast episodes, giving practical advice for facing systems, coping with public scrutiny, and turning pain into fuel for advocacy. Yet, for all the victories, the cost was visible. Sophia realized that no sentence or settlement could give back her lost years. She grieved for her childhood, for the birthdays passed in silence, for mothers and daughters never reunited. Eleanor carried guilt for the family she couldn't protect, but saw now that their fight was forging something stronger: community, justice, a new legacy. They learned to process grief together, attending support groups and therapy, writing letters to lost relatives. Sophia spoke candidly about emotional labor, about naming wounds and asking for help. Eleanor sponsored research on trauma recovery, investing in tools and technologies for healing. On the courthouse steps after the final hearing, Eleanor and Sophia stood in the sunlight, press and advocates swirling around them. Eleanor spoke with conviction. Justice does not erase the past, but it writes new chapters. Our truth is out. Our shadows will never rule us again. Sophia hugged her, tears and smiles tangled. If you've ever lived through a trial, wrestled with open wounds, or fought for more than money, for recognition, for change, for meaning, add your voice below. Every comment is a piece of healing, a pledge to keep truth alive. Because history isn't just verdicts, it's what we do afterward. Victory in court wasn't an ending. For Sophia and Eleanor, it was the first genuine breath after years spent underwater. Sophia, refusing to let pain define her, threw herself into building something newer foundation in Eleanor's honor. Eleanor backed the idea fully, pledging enough funding to make real waves beyond the Whitford empire. The mission was clear: prevent baby trafficking, reform foster care, and force hospitals to safeguard the vulnerable. They recruited board members with lived experience, hired policy strategists, placed survivors in leadership roles. Lobbying began at state and federal levels, demanding new protocols for maternity wards and stricter oversight of private adoption procedures. Revenge was now purpose, and truth was no longer solitary, but communal and contagious. The first year was transformative. Sophia and her team reunited children with biological relatives, published exposes on adoption fraud, and partnered with tech companies to create secure hospital record systems. Eleanor appeared alongside her at press conferences, delivering speeches about the necessity of transparency and compassion in healthcare. Their advocacy drew attention from lawmakers, philanthropists, and celebrity allies. Sophia balanced school and work, pursuing her degree in pediatric nursing while supervising outreach programs. She designed workshops for foster youth, teaching self-advocacy and resilience. Practical strategies took center stage: how to document suspicious activity, when to consult legal aid, techniques for emotional recovery. The Foundation's website hosted templates, toolkits, and hotline links, making support easy to find and real to access. One symbolic act changed everything. Sophia placed the original $25 necklace and a photograph of Helena in a crystal case at the Foundation's headquarters. Families visiting the center would see this artifact a testament to the power of refusing silence, surviving conspiracies, and exposing shadows. Eleanor contributed her memoirs, sharing lessons in leadership and vulnerability. Sophia spoke on podcasts, joined roundtables, and cultivated communities where revenge meant protecting the innocent, not fueling further harm. Their efforts sparked state reforms and inspired other foundations to follow suit. New laws passed, hospital protocols strengthened, funding for foster youth tripled in Illinois and neighboring states. Sophia found her voice not just through tragedy, but through building a space where others could thrive without apology. She ran support groups for kids aging out of the system, mentored aspiring nurses from tough backgrounds, and campaigned for better mental health care in public schools. Eleanor shadowed policy meetings, testified in government hearings, and openly acknowledged her old mistakes. She praised Sophia's courage, celebrating the way her granddaughter turned revenge into a blueprint for healing. Together, they documented their journey. A Netflix-style documentary took shape, pairing cinematic drama with hard data, inviting the world to bear witness and get involved. At anniversary galas and fundraisers, they shared laughter, tears, and stories from families, reunited moments that rewrote what wealth and status could mean. The foundation was no longer just a Whitford project. It became a Chicago movement, mirrored around the country. Their legacy was a network of truth-tellers, warriors against the shadows, agents for a kinder future. If you've ever wanted to give back, build something meaningful from loss, or join forces for good, share your ideas below. Your support, advice, and stories become part of a foundation that survives anything fate throws its way. Because protecting others against the shadows is the greatest revenge, and the truth always overcomes the shadows. Helena Whitford's legacy was not written in financial spreadsheets or courtroom verdicts, but in the daily choices, hard-won trust, and the growing bond between Eleanor and Sophia. In the months after the legal storm, their world shifted from crisis management to something surprisingly tender, a series of early mornings with coffee and laughter, late night journaling side by side, and moments where vulnerability replaced strategy. Sophia, once defined only by survival, could balance pediatric nursing classes with her new foundation work. Eleanor, for the first time since her daughter's death, learned how to be a grandmother. Gone was the distance of power here, presence ruled, but Sophia's days grew kaleidoscopic. Seminars, hospital rounds, and foundation brainstorming sessions, all colored by a sense of belonging she never thought possible. While Eleanor networked with lawmakers and business titans, Sophia built staff culture rooted in empathy and empowerment. They made it tradition to visit the places where their journey began: Detroit's reformed hospital, the Chicago neighborhoods that bled into Larera, and even the countries Eleanor had run to in her years of exile. Each trip meant revisiting memories, some suffocating, others redemptive. But Sophia learned more about Helena through Eleanor's stories: her laughter, her stubbornness, the way she used to sing with windows open. Together, they curated these memories for future generations, determined that neither grief nor vengeance would ever silence their history again. One particularly poignant afternoon, Sophia received a stack of handwritten letters from Daniel Brooks, now serving time. The words were filled with guilt, apologies, and raw reflection. Sophia read them, weighing forgiveness not as an obligation, but as a possibility. She chose response through action, more advocacy, deeper compassion, refusing to let bitterness eclipse her promise. She spoke about this at foundation events, urging audiences to look past easy narratives and search for the deeper truths in family, loss, and legacy. Justice, she told her peers, is more than verdicts, it's what we build after the storm. Eleanor embraced her role as mentor and friend, ferrying practical wisdom between boardrooms and living rooms. She taught Sophia strategies for board disputes, PR crises, how to turn every setback into a lesson for others. When trolls and critics flared up online, Eleanor advised boundary tactics, digital security, and how to harness negativity for fuel, not pain. Sophia, empowered by these lessons, started a series of support webinars for foster alumni, trauma survivors, and families rebuilding after loss. But every episode was an open invitation for listeners to rise above their own shadows, to convert hurt into help. Their travels brought more than stories, they brought healing. At Detroit's revamped hospital, Sophia met nurses and doctors trained under the new protocols her foundation proposed. Every safe birth, every reunification, every quiet victory marked the difference between system failure and recovered hope. They spent a week in cities Eleanor had fled for sanctuary. No, both women could walk the boulevards with their heads high, no longer haunted by old rumors and unfinished business. Sophia filmed short documentaries capturing stories of others whose pain had turned into purpose. Eleanor narrated voiceovers, her tone part battle cry, part lullaby. Back in Chicago, their routine remained a mix of activism and intimacy. Family dinners where the conversation wasn't about the past, but about future projects. Afternoon walks in Millennium Park, discussions about legacy, healing, and the best uses of Whitford Beauty Group's reach. Fans and advocates reached out from every continent, sharing stories that mirrored Sophia's journey. Lost children found, families reclaimed, justice served. The Foundation's hotline buzzed with tips and gratitude, its social channels alive with raw, honest testimony. Sophia was more than an heiress. She was a connector, an instigator for change, a living, breathing argument against despair. Flashbacks of Helena, pieced together by Eleanor, gave Sophia the courage to rebuild. Through old letters, photo albums, and the stories that came alive in Eleanor's memory, Helena became more than a ghost. Sophia realized she was living proof that the dead do not disappear. They echo in the choices we make, the risks we take, the truths we dare to speak. In every board meeting, every hospital visit, every family dinner, Helena's legacy propelled them forward, a compass that always pointed to justice and compassion over revenge and self-pity. If you've ever felt your history was just too heavy to carry, or doubted that family could heal after generations of secrets, look at Eleanor and Sophia's story and let it unsettle your certainty. You are not your wounds. You are every moment you stand up and demand that the darkness answer to you. Don't just feel moved, make a move. Challenge the patterns. Share this story with someone who needs hope. Lend your voice to the conversation, your experience to the next survivor. If you missed the chance to comment before, share now and prepare yourself for the powerful close that's coming, because the grand finale won't just wrap a story. It will offer every reader the chance at transformation. Stay, share, and let the final truth speak for you, because the truth always overcomes the shadows. The air buzzed with anticipation. Chicago's tallest ballroom sparkled with crystal and flashing lights. Crowds gathered. Journalists jostled, socialites whispered as the night's award ceremony prepared to name its champion. On stage, a slender display case gleamed under spotlights. Helena's $25 necklace and a photo that had launched a revolution. Sofia Alvarez walked out first, every step sure, every heartbeat echoing the impossible journey from abandoned newborn to foundation leader. Eleanor Whitford followed, the regal mentor, her pain transformed into purpose, her power now woven into justice. The energy in the room was electric. Here was no quiet reconciliation, but a crescendo, a victory that screamed to every survivor, "You are seen, you are unbreakable." The audience was on the edge of their seats as Sophia took the microphone. Her voice didn't tremble, it soared. "I was lost. I was discarded. But I refused to stay in anyone's shadow." She retold her story not as tragedy, but as proof that truth, once unleashed, carves pathways for everyone left behind. She thanked Eleanor now more than family, but the architect of healing. She teased future projects, global expansion of the foundation. New tech for safe adoptions, scholarships for foster youth, innovation that would keep setting the bar higher. The crowd erupted in applause, a wave of dopamine hitting every listener. Sophia's final phrase, "Revenge isn't about looking backward, it's about rewriting the map." If one necklace can start all this, imagine what your action can do. Eleanor stepped up next. Her eyes swept the crowd. Her smile, fierce and gentle, announced a woman made whole by the fires she'd survived. She spoke boldly, naming names, praising whistleblowers, celebrating every victim who refused silencing. She told of journeys through grief, through media noise, through corporate war, culminating in this night, when light had finally banished every shadow. Eleanor challenged powerful families and public officials present. Use your money for meaning. Step out from behind your masks. Let your legacy be measured by the children you save. Her final words resonated like poetry. Don't worship wealth. Worship courage. Don't chase numbers. Chase the truth. And every time you share what matters, the shadows grow smaller. The celebration didn't fizzle out, it escalated. On screens around the room, videos played of children reunited with families. Testimonials from nurses. Former foster kids now attending college. Web services pinged new followers joined. Donations poured in. Comments and reactions from every corner of the globe flooded the channel. Eleanor and Sophia hugged on stage, surrounded by friends, supporters, and faces from every chapter of their saga. The foundation announced a new initiative, an online platform where anyone could tell their story, join advocacy campaigns, or find legal help in real time. Dopamine roared as viewers saw how far the truth could spread. Sophia's phone buzzed with messages, former foster siblings watching, strangers sending gratitude, journalists already prepping tomorrow's headlines. Kids in shelters, teens in tough spots, parents facing injustice, all sent selfies, voice notes, clips promising to fight for their own light. Eleanor opened her phone to a global network map, lines connecting every participant in their movement, the ripple effect growing by the second. As the event wound down, the glass case containing Helena's necklace was moved to the foundation's main hall, displayed next to a digital screen archiving testimonies. The world was invited. Tell your truth, challenge systems, make your legacy out of action. Sophia knelt beside the display, whispering a thank you to the mother she never met. Eleanor watched, tears on her cheeks, pride blooming where grief used to live. But the dopamine didn't end in applause or awards. The real hit came from the channel's promise. Next episode, another true story of revenge, truth, and shadow work ripped from headlines, bleeding with raw possibility. Teasers rolled, stories of lost siblings, epic whistleblower victories, children rising against impossible odds. The audience salivated, DMing friends, sharing links, ready to join a movement that refused ever to fade out. If you felt your heart race, your mind spin, your hope burn brighter through Sophia and Eleanor's journey, don't just watch act. Spread this story. Become its next hero. Invite others into truth's avalanche. Drop your comment, your share, your pledge to stay tuned. When you finish here, know the best is always ahead. The next fight, the next fight, the next reward. Because in this channel, truth isn't just Victoria sits viral. The shadows never win. So, get ready. What comes next will change everything again. The truth always overcomes the shadows.